A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News live here on Newsfirst on this Wednesday evening. I'm Mahina Bongzo.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Shahin Virampati. Let's take a look at tonight's headlines.
Former CJ Sarath Silva ordered to appear before court over a contempt of court case. Government allocates 250 million rupees to combat the fall armyworm infestation. 1 acre of destroyed farmland to receive compensation of 40,000 rupees. The suspects involved in yesterday's heroin bust to be detained and interrogated. A proper mechanism for television ratings is required, says intellectuals.
And for those stories in detail now, the Supreme Court today ordered for former Chief Justice Sarath N. Silva to appear before court on the 7th of next month over charges of contempt of court.
A case was filed against the former Chief Justice alleging that he had made comments that were in contempt of court at a rally in Maradana on the 3rd of December 2018. Senior Professor Chandragupta Tenuara, Professor Hevavaduge Cyril and Senior Professor Priyashantha Gunawardena had filed the petition. Former Chief Justice Silva was present in court today before a bench comprising of Justices Mudur Fernando, Vijit Malalgoda and S. Tureraja. However, his lawyer, President's Counsel Romesh De Silva, stated that he was present based on information he received through media reports and did not receive summons to be present in court. The bench considered this and ordered that Sarath N. Silva reappear in court on the 7th of February. I have worked as a legal professional for 51 years. I have held every position in judicial bodies. I have never insulted the court. If I had insulted, I would have been insulting myself. I have been insulted in 7 pages of this petition. 17 charges from a no-confidence motion are in those 7 pages and they are baseless. You are talking about Mahinda Rajapaksa's helping Hambantota case. I did not say that. A man told me that you could have put Mahinda Rajapaksa in jail with 1 sentence. I said I gave the decision according to the evidence presented, and I told this man at the market that if I had made a mistake, forgive me for that. It is this story that they are trying to highlight. If there are allegations against Mahinda Rajapaksa, they haven't been raised as yet. No one has said that the decision I gave was wrong. No, I have never said that. I did not give a verdict like that. Can you find fault with a decision that I did not give?
Well, joining us in the studio this evening is Chaturanga Hapwarach, who has a detailed report, a special report rather, on the controversy surrounding the emergency power purchases in the country. Chaturanga, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Shine. As you mentioned, we are going to talk to you about the emergency power purchasing. Now, just to give you surrounding the background of what I'm going to tell you, when there is an emergency power requirement, the only instances that you can actually go ahead and do an emergency power purchase is when there is a malfunction in a major power plant in the country, or when there is a disaster situation in the country. Those are the 2 instances where the government can decide without calling for international tenders or without calling for tenders to go ahead and buy power. Now, if power purchases are being done from private power suppliers or PPS people, the PUCSL needs to be involved. The PUCSL has to give their approval. A proper tender process has to be followed. And finally, the mechanism or the pricing mechanism should be based on the competitive pricing mechanisms that are out there. Now, we know from time to time we have been talking to you about the electricity mafia, the power mafia in the country, various people trying to manipulate things when it comes to these independent power purchases or power being purchased from private parties. In the past, there was approval from the cabinet to buy power from 3 power plants in the country, and the tenure pertaining to the contracts that were reached with these power stations, these private power plants, concluded. Now, the requirement for the power purchase, as we just read, the approval was granted to obtain 220 megawatts of power, and in 2017, the Cabinet of Ministers had approved this requirement of 220 megawatts. Now, what happens if the cabinet approves this? even though the cabinet approves the purchase of power, emergency power from the private power suppliers in the country, there should be the approval of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Without the approval of the PUCSL, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, you cannot go ahead and purchase power from private power suppliers. But what happened with regard to this 220 megawatt requirement that was in place? 100 megawatts of power was obtained without the approval of the Public Utilities Commission, with only the approval of the cabinet at the time, and this was done, as some would say, in a forceful manner back in the day. 100 megawatts was obtained. Now, when this happens, when this incident took place, a certain deputy general manager who refused to make payments was sent home for refusing to make those payments based on the fact that the PUCSL did not approve this. Now we come back to Minister Ravi Karunanayake, who was the Minister of Finance at the time. He said, if you take a look at this 220 megawatt requirement, we are taking this from private power plants. If you compare the value that we are paying for these private power plants and the value of actually buying them, when it comes to these power plants, it would be cheaper. It would be cheaper just to buy these power plants altogether. This was not just said in an open area. This was said through a cabinet memo sent by the minister in question. He said it is better if these power plants are bought rather than we pay for the power that is supplied to these individuals. Now, what happened after that? The Ambilipitia power plant, Ambilipitia was the power plant that they took 100 megawatts from, from the 220 requirement that was prevailing. Even though they obtained 100 megawatts, only 15% of that plant was operating at its capacity. The government of Sri Lanka, the people, your money, was being paid for a power station, 400 megawatts rather, but only 15% of it was actually being taken. Now, why I am telling you this story is because I want to take you here to this advertisement that had been published in the newspaper. Usually, the term that these people use would be emergency power purchases, but this time around, as you can see in the heading straight away, they are calling it a supplementary power purchase. Now, when this happens, this document that you see behind me, published on newspapers, is calling for international bids ending on the 5th of February for people to come in for supplementary power purchases in the country. Now, there seems to be several practical problems there as well. When you take a look at the dates, from today until the 5th of February, is there enough time for international bidders to come here, set up power plants, set up generators, and actually move ahead with international power purchasing? That is a question that the general public will have to answer. Now, when an issue like this is being published, this has to first receive the approval of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Up to date, as of this moment, this advertisement published on newspapers has not gone to the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, or the PUCSL. Now comes the third problem. A long-term power generation plan was put in place in 2015. The objective of this long-term power generation plan is to make sure that low-cost power stations are being built in the country. Up to date, the government has not taken any initiatives towards that step to create actual low-cost power stations in the country. When you reach agreements with institutions like this, with institutions mentioned here in the list, I told you earlier that a 220 megawatt requirement was there, and these are the 3 power stations that the approval was granted for. When you take these institutions and when you go ahead and sign agreements with this, if you purchase power, or even if you don't purchase power, when the agreements are made, you have to make the payments, and those payments, your money once again, is made in dollars. So every time we make the payment, when the rupee depreciates, the value goes up, the value we pay goes up. Now again, to this document, when you take a look at the specifications mentioned here, one can question as to whether this document, this advertisement, has been made to favor a certain company operating in the country, so that this particular company, this document, looks like it was catered or specifically made to entertain, to help, to facilitate this tender going into one certain company. That once again is a question for the general public to decide. Now the locations that are mentioned here where the subgrids will be created, again the public can decide whether these things are catered for a certain company to favor certain individuals who are maybe close to certain people in the government. All in all, there is a problem with regard to this. We said when you take a look at the dates itself mentioned for the international bidders to come here and bid for this power purchase agreement, there seems to be a problem. So all in all this is for the attention of His Excellency President Maithripala Sirisena. There seems to be something going on, and we at News First will keep a close watch as to what is going on, and this is over to the President of the country. It's back to the main studio.
Well, thank you very much, Chaturanga. As Chaturanga said, serious concerns surrounding the energy sector in Sri Lanka. And of course, News First will keep a close tab on this matter and keep you informed as and when developments unfold. But in the meantime, moving on to more local news, parliamentarian Professor Ashumara Singha expressed these views in Parliament today.
You might remember the incident at the Angunukola Palace prison on the 22nd of November. Inmates at the prison were assaulted. Similarly, on the 16th of November, they were assaulted and murdered in prison. A number of incidents like this occurred during the 52-day period. Also during these 52 days, while there were discussions on the lowest bid that had been presented for LNG power, suddenly they signed an agreement with a South Korean company on LNG power. And the cost for this is much higher than the previous bid being discussed. Details on why the people in the palace wanted to do these things during the period of 52 days is coming out now. We know where the investigations into the murder of Tajuddin is and where the investigations into the Avant-Garde incident is.
Avant-Garde සිද්ධියේ පරීක්ෂණ කොතනද තියෙන්නේ කියලා.
Sri Lankan Airlines has posted a net loss of 40 billion rupees during a 9-month period that ended on the 31st of December 2018.
Issuing a communique, Sri Lankan stated that the loss for this 9-month period had increased by 29 billion rupees from the corresponding time period the previous year. However, despite the spike in losses from 11 billion to 40 billion rupees, the statement reads, quote, Sri Lankan Airlines recorded a significant improvement in its performance for the 9-month ended 31st December 2018 against the corresponding period in the previous year, unquote. It adds, quote, notable improvements were recorded in deployment of capacity, passenger and cargo revenue, market yield and unit cost, unquote. Highlighting the external factors that adversely affected the airliner, the statement said, quote, year 2018 was a challenging year for the airline due to the adverse impact of rising global fuel prices, rapid depreciation of local and regional currencies and political instability, unquote. Sri Lankan added, quote, increase in passenger revenue would have been much higher if not for the depreciation of key revenue gathering currencies, which amounted to $9 million during the period under review, unquote. CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines Vipula Gunatilaka said that year 2019 will be the year of consolidation for the airline, and the management initiatives undertaken during the second half of 2018 are expected to show positive results. This is the breakdown of profits and losses of Sri Lankan Airlines from 2008 to 2017. In 2009, following the withdrawal of Emirates, Sri Lankan Airlines incurred a loss of 9,305.94 million rupees. From 2008 to 2014, Sri Lanka incurred continuous losses under its then-chairman Nishantha Wickramasinghe, the brother-in-law of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. The unfortunate fate of the loss-making national carrier did not end there. Following the government change in 2015, Ajit Dias was appointed as the CEO of Sri Lankan. Following his resignation, Suren Ratwatta, the brother of Charita Ratwatta, who is a friend and advisor of the current Prime Minister Ranil Wickramasinghe, was appointed as the CEO of Sri Lankan.
Well, it was revealed at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into Irregularities at Sri Lankan Airlines that officials at the Treasury made decisions regarding daily activities of the airline without informing the minister in charge.
The Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, S.R. Article, stated that officials at the Treasury made decisions on daily activities without informing the respective minister. He stated that this was true especially in terms of Treasury bond issuance. It was revealed that the financial regulation document, which is considered as the Bible of the central bank, though been in practice for nearly 26 years since 1992, has never been presented or approved in Parliament till date. It was also revealed that the process of issuing treasury bonds since 1997 have not adhered to the rules and regulations of the RSSO and Monetary Act. Additional Solicitor General Neil Lunambue stated the RSSO states that the publication of a notice on the issuance must be done 2 weeks before the issuance. He said, quote-unquote, details including the date, amount, terms and conditions of the bids, maturity date, interest payments, dates, etc. must be included. Another release 3 days before the event should be issued detailing the coupon rate on payment of interests, and finally a press release must be issued detailing the results. Article responded that although the law has stated this, in practice this was never done, stating, quote-unquote, we have issued the Gazette notification only after the auction. It has become a tradition. In response, Chairman of the Commission, retired Supreme Court Justice Anil Gunaratna said that these events revealed the importance of having a knowledgeable person as the Finance Minister, saying, quote-unquote, for example, Ronnie DeMel knew these things and he was very confident. I do not know how things happen now.
The Police Narcotics Bureau was granted permission by court to detain and question the suspects arrested for the possession of heroin in Kolpiti.
A stash of heroin valued over 1 billion rupees was discovered in the possession of suspects arrested in a raid jointly conducted by the Police Special Task Force and the Police Anti-Narcotics Bureau last afternoon. The total weight of the stock of heroin is 95 kilograms. Among the arrested suspects are 2 American nationals and 3 other foreign nationals. Police informed court that a thorough investigation needs to be conducted into this incident. They added that therefore the suspects should be extensively questioned. Meanwhile, a person charged for smuggling heroin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison at the Colombo High Court today. He is a 33-year-old resident of Kolonava. Police arrested him on the 25th of April 2013 for the possession of 50 grams of heroin.
The method of raising questions was subject to a debate in Parliament today.
As you are aware, Speaker, the Prime Minister was to respond to several questions on Wednesday and Thursday during the second session of the Council. I had raised the question and was expecting an answer from the Prime Minister today. However, I have not received any form of response. My question was whether the working method has currently been stopped.
The
MP can raise this question tomorrow. The Prime Minister will provide an answer.
However, I did not receive any answer, not even a response as to whether I will receive an answer or whether I have the right to raise such a question.
The method of raising questions was halted during the period the government was forcefully taken over. However, this method has now been restored.
Minister of Agriculture P. Harrison made a statement in Parliament today on the Sena caterpillar epidemic.
A cabinet paper was approved to release 250 million rupees for the payment of compensation for the cultivations damaged by the Sena caterpillar. Surveys have already begun to pay a compensation of 40,000 rupees for every damaged acre under the agricultural insurance scheme. Some people attempted to claim that this caterpillar entered the country through various imported seeds. However, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, this is a total lie.
If it has spread to the country through the northeastern monsoon, it would have come from countries such as Bangladesh and Thailand. Those are countries located very far from Sri Lanka. You yourself said the lifespan of the caterpillar is 7 days. So think to yourself, if this caterpillar came into the country through the northeastern monsoon, how far would it have to come? What you are trying to do is hide the fact that this caterpillar spread through seeds by saying it spread as a result of the monsoon winds.
You are confused between the caterpillar and the moth. The caterpillar cannot fly. I said it was the moth that spread to Sri Lanka.
Minister, can you clearly say that this caterpillar did not spread through seeds?
I did not conduct investigations. However, the relevant institutions that did conduct investigations, such as Professor Veera Singha from the Ministry of Agriculture of the University of Peradeniya, notified us of this.
There is a huge issue due to the non-existence of a quarantine department in the country, or because such a department is inactive. Therefore, there is a huge risk to the country due to this department being inactive. These claims should be investigated because if there was any party who was importing crops, they would have done this to sabotage the yield that our country's farmers managed to cultivate, because their profits would have reduced. All we request is for you to provide farmers with seeds which are not infected by this caterpillar.
That is true. Currently, in the other countries of the world, they plant seeds which are immune to this creature. Therefore, we have requested the Ministry of Agriculture to run tests and recommend seeds which are more immune to this creature.
A media briefing was held at the office of the opposition leader today.
The media briefing was convened for the first time after Mahinda Rajapaksa officially assumed his duties at the office of the opposition leader. The briefing was organised by the media unit of the opposition leader. The required amendments to go back to the previous electoral system were brought to Parliament during the period that Mahinda Rajapaksa was the Prime Minister. But after that government was abolished, this proposal had been thrown away. We can pass and enforce it in Parliament within 1 to 1.5 months. We believe that we can even hold the provincial council elections across the entire country at once. We can see that the United National Party is lethargic in going for the provincial council elections. This is evident in the statement that they made and their silence on the matter. It also seems as if the Prime Minister is deliberately delaying the presentation of this report.
A
member of the Elections Commission had gone to the Supreme Court against the dissolution of Parliament. But the Commission is silent at a time when elections are being continuously postponed. In a few more days, we will take this matter to court. When we initiate legal action, we request the Elections Commission to stand for the people's right to vote before the courts without any fear. We have no alternative but to hold the elections under the previous system.
The following views were expressed during an intellectual discourse last evening.
There was a proposal to form a separate rating system incorporating both quality and quantity. However, this is yet to come into effect. If we do not want to be pushed to that point, it is then that they go to houses and give money. This is done with the intention of increasing their ratings. No one knows what are the forces that drive ratings. These are maintained in a confidential manner. On average, it's less than 1,000, around 600 to 700. It is questionable whether it will suffice if you measure the behavior of 21 million people without examining those 21 million.
Swift water search and rescue training, which took place in Eluwankulamaputlam, concluded today. This is the first time a high-level training of this nature was carried out in Sri Lanka. The conclusion of the training saw the participation of the Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Vice Admiral P.L. De Silva.
This training, which focused on preparing military personnel and civilians to rescue people during a disaster situation, was conducted by the international trainers, all highest graded in search and rescue from Taiwan and Japan. The participants who concluded the grueling program were certified by International Search and Rescue Advisory Group Level 1 Search and Rescue. The Navy commander and senior officials of the three armed forces attended the award ceremony. Swift water search and rescue training was conducted by Asia Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management Sri Lanka, or APAD, in collaboration with the Foreign Ministry of Japan.
Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to the Russian Federation, Dr. Dayan Jayatilaka, met with Deputy Minister of Defense, Colonel General Alexander Fomin, yesterday.
A media release was issued on the web page of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. According to the release, the parties discussed pressing matters of bilateral military and military technical cooperation and prospects for its further development.
The Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka arrived at the headquarters of the Pathfinder Foundation today.
The Chinese ambassador arrived at the headquarters of the Pathfinder Foundation earlier today to commemorate 1 year since he presented his credentials to President Maithripala Sirisena in order to become the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka. Founder of the Pathfinder Foundation, Milinda Morogoda, who was present at the occasion, presented the ambassador with a token in order to commemorate the completion of 1 year as the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka.
Foundation is a think tank that was established by former Cabinet Minister Mr. Milinda Morogoda in the year 2006. Since then we have been doing a lot of work with regard to promotion of bilateral relations between many countries. It is important to mention that in addition to the China-Sri Lanka Cooperation Studies Center, which is located just a couple of meters away from here, we also have two other centers. That is Center for Indo-Lanka Initiatives, that is to promote relations between Sri Lanka and India, and also to focus on law of the sea matters. The center is called Center for the Law of the Sea. So these three centers functioning under the Pathfinder Foundation are carrying out considerable amount of work.
Two compartments of an express train bound from Babunia to Colombo had detached from the engine. A number of such incidents were also reported in the recent past.
According to the railway control room, the compartments detached at about 7 this morning close to the Thalava railway station. The train was separated from the second compartment that was attached to the engine. There were 2 to 3 compartments that had detached. They were pulled a long distance with the engine. After that, the train drivers had joined the two sections. This is not the first time that train compartments had detached from the engine. On the 23rd of August, train compartments had detached from the engine between the Gampaha and Veyangoda railway stations. Such a detachment does not usually happen. We inspect the compartments and the couplers before a train leaves on a journey. There are two parts to this coupler. One is the head and the other is the knuckle. When it is locked, it does not detach. It can be detached during an emergency. That is how the mechanism is created. If it ever detaches, the brakes will also automatically be applied.
The promotional activities of the Sports First Alliance Platinum Awards 2018 was conducted in the Kilinochchi district today.
The Sports First Alliance Platinum Awards 2018 was organized to facilitate Sri Lankan sportsmen and women who excelled in their performance at the local and international community. The promotional campaign of the award ceremony was conducted for the 8th consecutive day today. The promotional activities commenced from the Kilinochchi Central College. The event was attended by officials of the Educational Director's Office, the Capital Maharaja Organization and officials from Alliance Finance. In line with the promotional sports activities such as football, rugby and baseball were introduced to school students in the area. The Platinum Gold Awards presented to the most talented sportsman in Kilinochchi district was won by weightlifter S. Durga from the Ramanathan Tamil Mixed School.
And with that, we conclude today's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. As usual, I'm Mahina Bongzo.
And I'm Shahin Jurangpati. Good night and take care.